identify why these places are have few viable activities. We want to claim that this can be for various reasons. For example, because of unfavorable climate, or government's fault because they initially built obsolete factories or obsolete businesses that are of no relevance in today's world. For example, in USSR, they let's say that they built a toy factory, but now it is because of old technology, it is not working. While we have more good factories in China because of economy of scale, cheap labor, and this was government's fault that they initially focused on wrong activities. Another thing is that maybe this region had less natural sources, or like over time they didn't accumulate favorable conditions for good businesses or farms. Another thing is as a result of a few viable activities, we have less services like medicine centers, schools, and because of that, these medicine centers or schools are usually built in the places where many viable activities, for example, in cities, agglomerations, and etc. And as you know, to get there, it takes a lot of time, and in some villages or somewhere else, they have even no roads to get there. Because government's budget is very limited, they tend not to build schools and medicines in that places. We deny most opportunities for people to develop, and there goes principal case that, for example, lottery of birth, your children being born in that unfavorable place have a right to move. You can't force your children to stay, for example, growing tomatoes at your little not viable farm. You should move away with your children where we have many opportunities. For example, get a great education. And also we want to point out that these children didn't give consent to live in that bad opportunities. Another principal argument is that, as I mentioned before, it is government's fault that these areas are not viable. So, as a reparation, it is their obligation to give reparation in form of like lower taxes and other financial incentives. Like people, if opposition side will say that we need to invest in these areas, maybe make a reverse of these areas, we are saying that waiting for them to restore these areas and waiting for that many, like 20 years, it's very not good idea, because every year is crucial. Maybe in this year people might develop and receive good services for their health, education, and another thing is we should care about a majority. If minority what majority's condition will be. For example, this majority, because of few liable activities, they have no work, therefore they have no wages, they are living in poverty, so we need to focus on that and move them to viable cities. Not necessarily cities. We can have agglomeration. For example, areas that specialize on oil or some other specialized areas. It's not necessarily mega cities. It's not mutually exclusive. So in our side we have people a chance to give them opportunity. In their side, people even do not have a chance. They just limited in all spheres, and majority is suffering. I had two principal arguments, and the utilitarian argument that we will give them more opportunities to flourish. Because people need these jobs to get more wages and etc.
I thank the speaker for those final remarks, and I invite the leader of opposition to open the debate for the side of opposition. Yeah.
We reject the notion that these cities are not sustainable. We believe there is still basic services that are covered to the degree. That means they have a police, they have a hospital, and the people can get help if they're sick. And I think, but yeah, we do concede the fact that there are still low wages, there are less workplaces, and that people have to compete to that. But we don't think that the situation is dire to the extent that they can claim that the government is failing them. Firstly, we do agree that in certain places government could have done some place, but when government failed at some place, it benefited people at other, because when you move capital from one place to other people benefit, and if there are some people who are left behind, it's not might be solely to the reasons that we can blame governments. Two things are from the opening opposition here. Firstly, how this hurts people who are left behind, and secondly, why people who go to there would be also worse off, and how their life would be bad as well. But I do want to establish one thing firstly. We believe in that areas where there are few economic viable activities, there are three groups of people. Firstly, there are people who would stay no matter what, because there are a sense of belonging to that place, they grew up there, and they don't, and also they establish certain communities, that they have certain ties with their neighbors, and they don't want to lose that. So these people do not change, and they will stay on either side. The another group is the people who would go out on both sides of the house. For example, the young people who would go to the college or to the pursuit of bigger cities, because they can do that in status quo, and they can do that without the incentivizing. So this is not the comparative. So the comparative, mostly in this debate, people who are actually living kind of okay, yeah, they struggle, they have low wages, but if they're incentivized to some of them will move to other cities. And we believe at the point when these people move out, this would hurt people who stay actually. They would be, the people who stay will be hurt in three ways. Firstly, we say that now city cannot sustain itself because people move out in the pursuit of benefits, and this means there are overall less amount of people. This is bad because this means there are few workplaces and businesses, because this leads to the fact that there are less services than in the status quo. Even if you believe that the characterization of the opening government situation will get on our side of the house, when actually pharmacies will start to close because there is no one to work at there. And secondly, nobody will buy the products and the businesses will shrink because there is simply too small market to have a certain degree to kind of expand and to sustain the whole city. That means these businesses are also hurt and the whole city is material well off. And the people who do remain cannot buy drugs, cannot buy products, and even if they buy, it's far more expensive. We believe this is very bad, very bad. Second way they are hurt, we believe they are politically now do not matter. That's to say, in that cities where now there are less votes and the politicians have less incentives to care about that cities, and that means I campaign mostly in big states, in big areas where there are people who vote, and especially in places like who use proportional representation, the people will be hurt massively because they cannot represent themselves in a way that is that will be important to the politicians. So they are politically disenfranchised on their side of the house as well. Third thing that happens and how they hurt, we believe the sense of community is actually also disrupted because there are less cultural activities now because there is demand, no people to go for them, and people lose ties to the communities because it is not the way it used to be, and because the whole people who did that activity are actually far more well off. And note the fact that people who would remain, the sick, the unskilled, the old who do not see prospects in moving there, even with the incentivizing the government, and we believe these people are actually who are the most vulnerable, will stay and will struggle. What happens on the alternative? There are two things to note. Firstly, we say that there is still some sustainment on the alternative because there are businesses buy from each other, the government still provides the budget because these people pay taxes and they have legitimate claim over that budget, and we think this is okay, and so there is some level of sustainment. Yes, by years in the long term the city is kind of shrinking, but people can live here still and sustain themselves and their lifestyle, in which they do like. And second thing to note in the comparative, instead, if we have this amount of resources to invest and incentivize people to move outward, we think we can do that as the opening government correctly, invest in that cities and to try to revitalize that communities. And we believe that will be far more helpful for that people, especially to the ones who are the most vulnerable. This will also disincentivize even the young people to move out, and there will be always like kind of a supply of workers who can work and who can improve that kind of cities. Before I move on to my second argument, yes, Anish.
The reason why these communities do not move out is because of uncertainty associated in the status quo. We solve that uniquely by providing those incentives.
No. I think the vast majority of people who are content with their lives and people who want to move out, actually they can do so. They just take all the stuff and move to New York, and we don't think this is a group with so much comparative. But even if they do so, I've showed you why this is bad for the people who remain, and now I will show why this is bad for the people who go. How this overheat the places, and we think where the most places that these people are going to move? The big cities, because people want to go there for three reasons. Firstly, this is a better opportunities. You have far more job places here. If you're an IT guy, you can have an IT job there. Secondly, we say this is a culture. Like if you go to New York, there are a lot of bars, a lot of cultural excitements, and like this is the place where you want to be. And thirdly, this is the places that were most associated with being successful. For example, if there is an American dream, you go to Chicago, you go to New York, and if you are in India, you go to Mumbai and the big cities. You don't go to small cities. Yes, government can say that they can accommodate these people in a way that is balanced. We say no, because government cannot forcefully move people because it is their right, and people can refuse. And one simple reason that I also showed why they will refuse. But I want to add that they want new place to be worse than the place that they leave behind. So mostly they want to go to the best option that they have, and this best option is the big cities. That's because this is where the best hospitals are, best schools are. So this is where people move. And why this is bad? Because overheats these places, because they cannot accommodate everyone. The amount of job places and as resources is restricted as well. And this means that at the point when a lot of people enter the market of that big cities, this means the wages will drop due to the oversupply of the labor, and also this means that housing will increase because there is a far more demand for renting, for buying a new house. This means the living in that new city will be far more expensive, and people can afford far more less for their lives. This means they are worse off than they would have been in the status quo. Very proud to propose.
Oh, I thank the speaker for those fine remarks, and I invite the Deputy Prime Minister here.
There is a villages who have everything and all the basic needs, but still they exclude those cities or villages that do not have such utility benefits. And I will explain why in the first case and the second case that they have excluded, in their case, these people will still get a benefit. First of all, they're saying that if we are going to the cities, there is more, it is more competitive and etc. But still, this minority of people who do not get even in this place jobs, they do not get here. They still have a small chance of getting job in the cities because there is more opportunities to have a job because government is saying to move not where there is no job, but still have better higher percentage that they're gonna get the job. So it is not kind of a case when you're moving to the big cities, you'll not get the job anyway. Still, you have a higher chance of getting it. And secondly, they are saying about the people who it is competitive and instance what happens, etc. But we are saying that there is few viable jobs. That means that there is majority of the population, the very major part, there is without a job. I mean, there is still very so much people who do not have those jobs, and so when we encourage them to move, they will get a job because we're encouraging them to move, and they will have a motivation to do this because first they do not have a job, secondly they in the impact they cannot feed their family, and in the impact they cannot afford those utilitarian benefit that opposition says it is already provided, and they cannot afford this provided utilitarian benefits. And and they are saying about those cities who are okay, but they are not excluding in this in this motion. They should be included. Those people, as my first speaker said, that are living in very poor niche, and that is why they do not have those jobs. And in this case, I think it is really important to understand that in this debate, so much villages that the majority of the population do not have those utilitarian benefits. Majority of the population do not have those jobs, and when they move, you know what happens? They will get a job or have at least a chance to have a job, or at least to have more than just a village with no supply of there is edges of cities that have no supply for this, and there is no viable cities, which opposition side do not discuss in these debates, which is really significant. And in our side of the house, those people get benefits, those people get utilitarian benefits, and moreover, those children, the children of those people have a right to have those utilitarian benefits, and that is why government should do this. And next, they say that there is no political activity. Yes.
The children of that parents would be also worse off on your side of the house when their parents would have less wages, and when they would pay far more to the renting. This means they have less money to give to their children.
Okay, thank you. If if there is less viable activities, that means they do not have a job at all. It is really like there is minorities that do not have a job at all, and there is a majority in those villages who are dying in the wars, who do not have social benefits or jobs at all. And in this case, we choose paying more renting, but at least having a job, at least having what to eat, at least having some salary rather than having nothing. So in this case, in this point, I think it is much more beneficial on our side of the house, and I think why it is really, and I'm going to explain why it is really significant to focus on those people who do not get those jobs, or the majority of the population who do not get those jobs, and in this case, if people are still leaving this town, there is, first of all, there will be much more jobs for those who left, and that is why there is gonna like still less population. But if in the impact of the opposition, if those villages will have less population, less critical crisis, economical crisis, and etc., and they at the end, at the long-term effect, they will not have a job, so they will they will be encouraged to move too. So, but it is at the worst case. So. Okay, why it is important to focus on those people who do not get jobs rather than for those who get jobs. Those who get jobs, who have jobs, who lives, who stays, and in there they still have something to pay, have something to eat, have something to feed their family. But while those who do not have jobs and have really restrict a chance to get those jobs are are beneficial on our side of the house. And certainly, government should do this also for that reason that was said by my partner, that government opposition said they are paying taxes, they have a social contract, and that is why they have to do something with that there is no jobs and very few jobs, and that is why those people deserve to move, or not deserve, they government should do this and encourage them to do this. And when they are moving, we have to emphasize that they are financially encouraged. That means that they will have something like houses, or they will have opportunity to do this, because government encouraged by themselves emphasize financially, not just say go.
For those final remarks, and I invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue the debate for the side of opposition here.
May I start? Dear Judge, I think this debate isn't about a right to reparation or a right to have something, etc. Because we believe that in this House beliefs motion we have to claim what would happen if something will, if government will incentivize or government will not provide those incentives. And I think that what we have to consider are the practical arguments only, and we believe that government should take it into account. So two things that I'm going to talk about. First, about the uncertainty that closing government is considering, and secondly, how the life will change in the cities, and why is it better in those cities. So about the certainty, we don't really believe that what they are saying and what they are giving is giving certainty from the government. Because what we believe is they are crushing the certainty that those people already have. That's to say, they are crushing the certainty and the happiness that they have in those cities. That they have, probably they have some standards of living, but it already fits the criteria of their happiness. They are already happy about that because it's everything that they have, everything they may have, and therefore they are happy about that. But what they give is the illusion of choice. That's to say, yes, maybe you make some people question their lives. You make them question because you say, we as a governmental authority giving you a chance, we as a governmental authority giving you some chance to do it, and you have this chance, and you can get this chance and go to the cities. However, we believe that what they are giving is only motivation to question their lives, but not the key to get free from the chains that they have. Why is that? Okay. Why is that? Because note that in those areas, it's like a very strong communities. Let's say a very strong communication with families. Because mostly, let's say, you don't really have many entertainers. You don't really have many liberational movements, etc. Like the teenagers may liberate from, etc. Let's say they have to listen for the authorities as elderly, as family, and they have to be very close to them because they mostly work in a family enterprise, in the farms, etc. And therefore they are strongly tied to their families, they are strongly tied to their parents, and they are strongly tied and dependent from their communities. However, we believe that there will be strong pressure coming from the family to stay there. Why? Because mostly your older parents that stay in the status quo have a strong ideology that you have to stay anyways, and this is a lie, and you shouldn't go to the city. Why? Because if your parent has stayed for a long time in this area, it means that he has to have a strong ideology that this is the best thing, and all other things, all other opportunities are lies, and you have to stay here. And therefore, your parents will make you stay. But secondly, though, most of them understand that this is the limited help. That government is not going to give you paradise, but a limited help. And if you go with a family to the city, you still have to care about your parents that will not have a job because their skills are only for farms, are only for those enterprises. That's why there will be strong pressure from the community, and therefore, what will happen as a result, maybe you'll be convinced the city is good, however, you will still stay because this pressure is so strong in those communities, and you will not receive the happiness that you have received, but live in those restricted communities. Yes?
Okay, so these tight-knit communities stay, and they're happy where they are. Why their happiness is more important than the other people who choose to live in the status region?
I think what is important in this debate is that the majority of those people who live there will actually suffer because what I think on your side of the house, the benefits you're talking about as the one already came won't be achieved either. So I will explain this in the second point. So secondly, talking about sustainability, etc., etc. That's why I think it's very unfair for government to claim that those people in those areas living desperate lives and have nothing to eat, etc., etc. Because if they were desperate, this means they have nothing to lose in both worlds, and their parents and families would actually talk to them to go anyways. However, which means in status quo they have some skills. That's why when they go to the cities, I think. Yes, this help will be limited, some of them will be helped, some of them probably will lose and will not be able to adapt because adaptation is very hard, it isn't easy for everybody. Adapting for the competition, adapting for the environment is very hard. However, we believe that yes, maybe some of the people will succeed, some of the people will believe, and some of the people will be able to do that. However, what changes is those who will fail have no way to return. Let's say if you left your family, if you left your community, it's a shame for you to return to this area because yeah, you failed, because you betrayed us for nothing, because you did nothing. I think this particular shame is very strong, so that you will still stay in the city, and therefore you will not live a happy life. So at the end of this debate, what we're talking in this case is what will happen, answering to the question that was asked by PY. Let's say you give excuse for government not to help these communities at all. Let's say government can claim that we already gave them a chance, but they refused. We already helped them, but they refused, and they didn't take this chance. Therefore, government have an excuse not to give those subsidies, not to help those enterprises, not to give those farms, which is a great necessity for those areas, because yes, to some extent you are sustainable, but you still need the help from the government. In this case, what will happen, majority that will stay in those areas will suffer because government ignores their problems, government has an excuse for their problems. So at the end of this debate, on the side of the government, you have some minority that maybe, probably yes, probably not, will gain a happy life. However, the cost of this minority is the majority that will actually deepen to the excuses of the bad government. Therefore, proud to voice.
I thank the speaker for those final remarks, and to open the second half of the debate, I invite a member of the government here.
So I will speak in this speech. I'm going to explain a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to explain why on the comparative this policy is by far more effective than trying to invest in those cities, and why those investments will most likely fail. Second of all, why it's more important for us to give the opportunities to those people who want to move than for those people who want to stay. And lastly, I'm going to explain why people will actually be empowered to leave, and therefore why most of the people are going to leave, and therefore why we have the more net profit from that. Before that, a few points of general refutation and framing, right? So what the government, the opposition side is claiming is that some people will stay and it's going to be bad for them. Look, what will happen? We understand that some people right now are deprived of the ability to make a choice, right? People who are poor, people who just do not have the opportunity to move to those cities, even despite the fact that they want to, they cannot choose to do so. The people that opening up talks about have a chance to choose what to do. They have a chance to choose whether to stay or whether to move, right? We believe that the first group does not have to suffer, so that the second one, who can make a rational choice to move if they want to do so, because it's allowed to them by the means of applying this motion, have to leech off of the sufferings of the second group and can be prioritized in this debate over that. But I will also explain why most of the people, even those people who have those cultural identities that opening up talks about, will still move. Second thing that they talk about is that wages will drop, housing problems will occur, etc. Let's understand, first of all, those groups are probably not so extremely big, right? They live in those small cities and therefore there's not that many people. Government can and probably will be incentivized to make it smart, right? You will not move everyone to New York. You will, for example, drop people in different cities so that there will not be so many problems with that. You'll try to divide up in batches. You go send one family to one place, send another family to another place. You'll try to focus it so that such problems won't happen. They're easily avoidable by mechanisms. So most other things will be inside of my case, so they'll be integrated, right? So let's first of all talk about a little bit of a frame. So we believe in those cities, most of rich or highly educated people have already moved a long time ago for better opportunities because of the fact that they're educated about the opportunities that are existing in the cities, because because they usually possess more liberal values and therefore they want to move to cities to join the people who have the same values as them, and because they had the opportunity, right? Most of the people who are left, they're probably there for economic reasons. They're too poor to move from these places, because even if you have some kind of cultural identity, it's probably problematic for you to stay in a place that does not give you enough education, does not give you enough profit, does not give you enough, basic civil service, etc. Even if the opposition talks about the fact that they have some basic needs, sure, maybe they do have basic needs, but they do not have anything above that, and people do have this American dream they see on TV, they have it in cultural discourse that you can have more, and therefore they probably desire more stuff, right? It's likely that many people have this cultural, identity of a worker town that works only because a coal factory exists in a place for a long time, but even if people have cultural identity, we believe it's still not necessarily the most important thing to them. So we believe that the ability for us to enable those poor people is crucial. And we agree that there are different ways to do that, right? Investment is a possible option, right? But we believe that investment is expensive incomparably with the motion that we're talking about, right? Because you'll have to either reverse climate change, right, that has happened in these regions that is not allowing people to stay there properly. You have to reinstate like coal industry, which is extremely problematic from a political side and from the side of not killing the entire planet. You have to build up new infrastructure to create like IT or whatever other industries, etc., which is extremely expensive because you have to move in a lot of people. And industries themselves are probably not going to be very keen to do that, right? Because there is no actually good workers in those cities left, because those workers are probably already moved a long time ago. So therefore, they're not very much incentivized. Governments cannot really effectively incentivize those people to do that, right? Comparatively, we believe when we do fail to attract those businesses, we on our side can do very simple things that will still help people, right? We can give them welfare packages. For example, for a couple of years you're going to get some welfare, which is going to be not so big per person, that will be able for you to afford some kind of basic cheap housing and, for example, some food until you find a job, for example, right? We can give some basic tax breaks for a couple of years for people so that they can settle up, and therefore before they kind of rise up on the career ladder. It all does not cost the government nearly as much as what the opposition side is going to cost for them, because those investments will require you to do so. But also we believe that those investments are likely to fail, right? Because even if they invest into those cities, even if they try their best, so if they spread those small amount of funds across all the cities that are poor, it's unlikely that they're still going to get many results. Like probably companies are not going to come anyway, because in New York we will still have better workers, you'll still have this by far more customers to whom you can sell your service, most probably you still will have by far more other comparative advantages. So, and if they invest only in a few of the cities, then everything else is disempowered, and therefore it's still bad on the comparative, right? So we believe that they lose on this thing. But second of all, later. Okay, so why this will actually help people to live, unlike what opening up talking about. So why don't people move? Because it's scary, because it's expensive, right? Those two things. So first of all, we believe what changes. First of all, you will have to, because you'll have to drop your old job, and it's problematic, you have to move to those competitive markets, you need a safety net, and etc. Well, we provide you the safety net, right? It is one most important incentive that you did have before not to move. It's basically removed for you. You have time to go to New York to find out what it's all about, to learn some stuff. It's extremely problematic to move back, maybe without losing all of your funds that you have to save up, for example, and then invest in order to move at the moment. It makes people by far more likely to do that. Second of all, you don't want to move alone, but it's unlikely that you're going to, convince all of your friends and acquaintances that you love so much to move. If government has a campaign that gives money to people who move, it's likely that many people are going to move, which means you can go together with other people, which means which means that you're less likely to lose those cultural bonds that they're talking about. But third of all, and also importantly, from the same thing, many people are afraid to move because they have this idea, right? I've lived there all my life, my parents have lived there, etc. But when they see that the same people as them, those simple folk, not those smart, rich people, are moving out, they'll see that those people are capable of doing that, and therefore you are also capable of doing that because you're no worse than them, you're from the same social class, you're from same status, therefore you're more likely to move on that regard if you see that still you have more opportunities in New York, even if you're going to work as a, someone basic. So what do they gain? They gain for social profits because cities are more liberal, they give you more opportunities in that regard. Sexual minorities can move out of those cities and have benefits that are impossible to achieve even if you bring investments to a place because they're small and therefore probably going to be pretty conservative. But you also have middle class revival of those cities, right? Even if we believe they're best case, right? If people move in and they have to work as drivers as you know, as cab drivers, as I don't know, logistics in logistic companies on the first generation, their children will still have access to proper education, to internship opportunities, to liberal communities that will not oppress their, you know, them if they're women, and therefore later on, they're probably later on in generations they'll have more chances. In those small cities, they're going to suffer forever, you know, because they just locked up in there, and it's by far more in comparison, and because that we're proud.
Speaker for those final remarks, and I invite the member of opposition to open the debate. Here.
Very proud speaking. So at the opening tables, we've seen just the classical debate round of why something needed to be done or something isn't to be done, and but actually none of the tables do not actually resolve the problem of the depression of those areas with a few economic activities because they follow the same mistake. And we, as the closing opposition, just clarify this mistake. So one must understand that any incentivization means intervening into the markets, and why intervening in the markets is just cannot be affordable anyway. So it is the classical approach of libertarian free market philosophy. So how does it work? So why one is able to just let it be? Yes, or by just letting it be as a free market, as a just free growth. Yes, in this case, they obviously will keep on living at the beginning of the this issue, but only at the beginning. But why it is still okay? Because thus the people will vote by their legs. I mean that the administration of these areas just can see the result, the fact that they are living right now, and why they are living. Because and the fact that they are living creates the problem for this administration, and this administration is likely to keep on seeking resolution or and to just make this to somehow minimize this problem, and they will seek for any they'll seek any policies maybe, or just some making economic conditions to make these economic activities much better and higher and just more in the quality, both quality and quantity. So, but these this logic requires just clear information that they are living and why they are living, and it requires non-intervention of any market in the market. So if and this common mistake that any of the current tables follow is here. So later. So if they somehow intervene, or as closing government suggests, just provide any welfare packages they will intervene into the market, and then this clear information is becoming less clear and moreover not clear at all. And then administration is obviously cannot do anything because they cannot find any reasons. What?
Opening opposition says that the alternative is investment. You cannot come out on closing opposition and knife the counter-proposal.
No, we are not actually knifing. We're just we're just showing the common mistake that any table follow, and then we just cannot just let it be. Of course, later. So why just is this free market is somehow better? Because it just guarantees steady growth. Well, so what is that? The steady growth? It is of course just some. The steady growth is means that the original they will create somehow their institutes. That and just this steady institutes. The institutes just maybe, for example, as United States at the beginning of their history provide any, for example, representation as a political matter to somehow just increase the economic activities and conditions. And if the economic activities matter, they will likely to provide any just liberal policy as for example inclusiveness to provide just available resources for each player in the market to somehow increase their economic activities, and thus we somehow resolve this problem of just depression in these areas with few economic activities. Why it is better to the thing that is provided in the closing government just besides that this welfare packages maybe somehow will just affect the clearness of the information that the administration will gain, it will moreover just affect into the inequality in cities. So they don't provide the logic why the citizen of any rural areas has the right to somehow gain just welfare packages, and it may just cause the inequality and maybe just some protests or something like that in the big cities itself. And just something about cultural stuff, I suppose it is just the same logic as principle. They say just more benefits will just overwhelm just the cultural opinion that they will not stay. We say that no, it is like just a principle logic and the culture matters. Thank you.
Yes, to speak for those final remarks, and I invite the government whip here.
2 points in my speech. Firstly, on investment, on why the investment in individuals to move is far more effective than in the alternative proposed by open opposition. Secondly, who are the kinds of people that move and why their lives could be far better on our side of the house. First, addressing closing opposition. Closing opposition's case is basically that free market capitalism, free market will sort things out. We think that first, That's inconsistent with opening opposition's alternative. Opening opposition clearly states that their alternative is investing in those kinds of cities. To the extent that that's true, closing opposition will have to show why that thing is actually consistent with free market capitalism that they're talking about. We will not, in closing government, try to refute those two contradictory ideas, and we think that that's basically we're going to contest and clash with opening opposition. So per se, investment. We think that a lot of the debate hinges upon the team that explains mostly where the investment is effective. I think that opening opposition implicitly kind of agrees that a lot of the time, you cannot punish people. Their first speech is that you cannot punish one. When government moves one people to another place, government benefits some people and the other. The opening opposition does not explain why uniquely those vulnerable communities are the ones that we should be talking about. I will explain why investment means that you have more utility overall, and secondly, I will still, even if that's not true, explain why sick.
I thought that.
No, please. Investment. On this, Mukhtar already perfectly explained to you why investing in those regions is actually counterproductive. It means that there are a lot of the time environmental degradation, those industries are out of date. What is that, what opening opposition says here? Opening opposition says that people's lives in the cities would be worse because of the pressure that it puts on rent and the pressure that it puts on labor. Firstly, on rent, we think that that's natural growth of agglomerations, and we think that that's not something that is really bad. We say that when cities grow, you can move to places that have lower rent, and if you are in San Francisco, you can move to Berkeley, you can move to Oakland. We think that in those places, you still have infrastructure because cities and communities can afford them, because per 1 meter of road you pay less than you pay in those communities, because there are just more people there using those roads, and these cities have far more tax dollars to invest in them. So on the comparative, because the rent is a bit more expensive and you have to live far away, that doesn't mean that actually affects your quality of life in the meaningful sense. What does they say on cheap labor? They say that the labor is bad there, and you will not have a lot of money. We say that that's not firstly comparative. Cheap, their labor is cheap and wages are cheap because of the framing that my partner has already provided. But we also think that that's important and something that's good. As a tech company, you will choose to go to the city that has more labor and that has more opportunities. But the crucial difference is when Amazon builds headquarters on the comparative with just investing in post, you have the ripple effects of those investments. When Amazon comes to your city, you have more logistics, you have more service companies oriented around them, and every dollar that you spend in attracting Amazon, you are more likely to get more returns on the investment that you have. But secondly, it's also things like agglomeration effects. We think that because the unique speed of growth in Silicon Valley and Austin, Texas, you have more intellectual economy where a lot of the people can move from different places to another, and tech companies don't have to go all around the country to find the person that they need. You have more growth in those cases. What does that mean? What does that mean on the comparative? Because on the comparative, you just spend money to build roads in those places or build factories. Why on the comparative that's more important? Firstly, is because you have more choices available to these people. My partner already talked about this. You can but what are the examples of that? It means that you can avoid a workplace that has a harassing boss, and you can move to another job that you can't do on their side. Because even if you do invest, the choices that are available to you are limited. And opening opposition calls it illusion of choice. We say that factually that's not correct. Secondly, overall you have much more dollars per box that you spend, and the return that you get is going to be far more important. But thirdly, it is the other thing that my partner already talked about, how the stereotypes and how intellectual communities and cities work, and things like being the vulnerable minorities in those places. Because of the way how cities work and social agglomeration effect, you have people of these minorities feeling far more comfortable. That, just a bit. That on the comparison means that far longer term solutions to these people that opening opposition does not talk about. Yes?
We're not supporting the idea of building a strong coal industry for a province. We're just saying provide them with more efficient equipment that will resolve land problems. And you still have to refuse the idea of the prevailing majority suffering in the
That's 2 points. So first point, yes, they say we will invest in land. We say that yes, that's bad, because when you invest in land, you only invest in land, and you only invest in the amount of growth that can happen in that city is in that place is going to be limited. We say that open government done a lot of job explaining why those cities don't have future. We're not going to talk about that. Secondly, the next point about communities, about the people. My partner has already explained why these communities are likely to be poor. They're likely places like Detroit, where you have poor black families and you have white people moving out of suburbs, and that they don't have opportunities and alternatives. What is the comparison with open government? We say that my partner has explained uniquely why, because of the ways how uncertainty works in the status quo, because you're not sure that your community will move, because you don't know whether there is a safety net for you to move, you don't move in the status quo. That engages with the opening opposition's explanation that communities are just there, and on the comparison between OG and C, and OO, we bring you the actual impact of opening government materialize only when most people move. If they don't move, as opening opposition says, there is no point in doing that. What do they say? They say sick and unskilled and old. We can see that these people probably cannot move, but we say that they first, that's not comparative. They still live in crime-ridden areas. And these places don't already have that much political power. But secondly, we say that it's not always true that these people can't just move. Sometimes they can, these families in the long term can bring them to the cities and they can live in their suburb house, where you have far better infrastructure and land for those people. And thirdly, we say that even if that's not true, their children sending them money is already better than the status quo in which that doesn't happen. On the tight-knit communities, we say it doesn't matter. Okay, you're happy with your community, you don't want to go. The fact that you have pressure to move, is not a bad thing, because the kinds of people that we're talking about are far more important and they don't feel comfortable in this project.
I thank the speaker for those final remarks, and I invite the opposition whip to close the debate. Here.
Okay, opening government presumes that every area with few viable economic activities is an area where people live in dire conditions, where people suffer from poverty, disease, where people don't have access to police or to hospital equipment and access to medicine. But we must understand that just the fact that there has few viable economic activities doesn't mean that it has no economic activities at all. It doesn't mean that people have no jobs there, and there are many areas where there's just, for example, one factory where all the people from this area work, but these jobs still provide them with some kind of like minimum or even basic standard of living where people can enjoy a normal life. But even if we agree with the opening government, even if we admit that there are areas where people live in bad conditions, the opening government never proves us why it is really necessary to financially incentivize people to move from these areas, because they didn't tell us, they didn't analyze just the fact that if people really were in such bad conditions, if lives of people in these areas was really that bad, then they would probably try to move away by themselves, and they don't show us, they never tell us that it is the financial incentive, it is the lack of financial incentives that keeps people in these places. But we must understand that, and they never show us that. The only explanation, the first explanation about this fact we hear only on the closing government, when they tell us that people don't move away because they fear, they don't have a safety net when they move away. But even then, I will try to explain to you why financially incentivize people to move away is bad, and why it will make the situation much worse, and why there will be more harms than benefits in this case. So we must firstly understand that none of the tables of the government the logic stops just at the point where people move from the cities, that they don't go further, and they don't show us that the lives of people will significantly improve when they move, and the only the group of people who we can intuitively believe that will be better off later, that will be better off is the poorest of the poorest, who don't have any job, who don't have any basic income, and if they move away, yeah, probably their life will be better. But this is a very narrow group of people, and then that the majority of people in countries still have some basic income, and they still have a normal standard of living, and none of the tables of the government show us that the lives of these people will be much improved. But what we explain to you, and what opposition explains to you, is that if we incentivize people later, if we incentivize people to move away, the lives of people who stay in the communities, and there will be, and even if most people move, which we don't believe, there will still be people who stay in the areas, and we'll show you that the lives of these people will be much worse. So what we have here is that the impacts of the impacts of governments are not really well defined. We can't see any significant improvement of life, but on the opposition side we can see the significant damage to the communities that stay in this area. And so we must understand that we on the table of the closing opposition believe that at the very least government should not make the situation worse. We should just let it be. But in the case of government, we are making the situation worse, because these areas will continue to be existing. The people in these areas will continue to be poor, but now they will not have the economic activity in the regions will be even smaller, because now all of the people have moved, most of the people have moved away. Now the businesses will never, and now there's less chance for these regions to become developed. Whether in our world we still have some chance that the situation will be better off because of investment, but in their case we just completely cutting off the chance, and we're just guaranteeing the economic depression in this region. And on the point of that we knife the opening opposition by saying that we should let it be, we're not really knifing, we're just showing you another alternative. So we're not telling you that we should not invest and stop. We're telling you that there is also an alternative of letting things be, and we're saying that this alternative is better than what you are proposing us. So we're not openly contradicting or opening opposition. We're just saying that there is another alternative. So we must understand. No, and also the government don't tell us that we also must understand that the opening government doesn't take into account. The governments don't take into account the fact that when most people move away and we have these areas with low economic activity, the burden that the government will have on keeping the basic standard of living of these areas that are now much worse off will be improved, because now if in status quo we have areas with few economic activities but some economic activities, and the government doesn't really have to pay welfare or help those people to sustain a minimum standard of living. Now in the world where most people have moved away from these areas, now when these areas have become even worse off because we just yeah.
So being a factory worker in a small town is not necessarily better than being a cab driver in Los Angeles, but even if it is, at least your children can now become IT workers or something like that, instead of being the same workers on the same factory forever until your heritage days.
Yeah, but you don't really show the government again didn't really prove us that the people who can move away will not necessarily. So they only take the narrowest group of people, the poorest, and say us that yeah, their children will be better off. But as I already said, this group of people is very narrow, and I believe that if people believe in better lives for their children, they will probably move away on themselves, and the financial incentives are not needed. Are not needed in this case. So what we have, what we gave you, and how we compare to the opening opposition. Opening opposition so the opening government presumes that all the cities are bad. Opening opposition presumes that the life in the cities is not really bad, and there aren't any cities where people live in dire conditions. We
take into account that yeah, there are communities where people live well, people live really badly. There are communities where people can sustain a normal standard of living. But what we tell you is that it is not necessarily, we do not really need to financially incentivize this to people to move away. We also believe that we also show you that the lives of people who move away will not necessarily be better than they were in status quo. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
I thank you for those fine remarks, and I thank everyone for an enjoyable debate.